In this lesson, we're going to learn how to write the equation of a perpendicular bisector of a segment. First, we need to make sure we know what it means to be a perpendicular bisector. In our last two lessons, we've been working with perpendicular lines, and we know that their slopes are opposite reciprocals. And a bisector is a line that passes through the midpoint of a segment, and you'll recall that a midpoint cuts that segment in half. So let's look at a picture of what that would look like. So let's say I want the perpendicular bisector of segment AB. The first thing I need to do is find its midpoint. So let's see, it looks like right about there would be the midpoint. I'll call it M. And the midpoint is such that that side is equal to that side. Then the next thing I want to do is draw a line that is going to be perpendicular to this. So there's my line, and I can mark that it was perpendicular. So this line that I just drew here, that is the perpendicular bisector, perpendicular bisector of AB. All right, so when we want to find a perpendicular bisector, there are four steps essentially to doing the problem. The first step is to find the midpoint. The second step is to find the slope of this line. The third step is to figure out what is the perpendicular slope. And then the fourth step is to write the equation of our line. Now before we do one of these problems, let's go through all the formulas we're going to need to use in order to do this. And this you'll probably want to put in your notes, as well as think about this graphic organizer. This is a great way to organize all the steps so we remember what they are. So our first step is to find the midpoint, and you'll recall that to do that we average the x values, or x1 plus x2 over 2, and we also average the y values, or y1 plus y2 all over 2, and that gives us our midpoint. For slope, remember we simply take y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, or rise over run if you have a picture that you can just count it on. Now one of the things people often confuse is in slope we're subtracting our y's and subtracting our x's, but in the midpoint we're adding them. So you want to make sure you keep those straight. You'll recall that the perpendicular slope is the opposite reciprocal. And when it comes time to write the equation of the perpendicular bisector, we're going to get our point from the midpoint, and we're going to get our slope from over here, and then we're going to write the equation using point-slope form. Y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. All right, so now that we have all of our formulas we're going to need, we're ready to try out that problem we saw. So here it is, and we can see we've got 1, 7, and 9, 3, and our first step is to find the midpoint. So I'm going to add my x's, so let's see, 1 plus 9 over 2, and add my y's, 7 plus 3 over 2, and let's see, 10 over 2 is 5, oh they're both 10 over 2, 5, 5. There we go. And in this graph, I can actually plot it since it's got it here for me. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and up 5. I should make sure it falls on the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There it is. There's my midpoint. All right, next thing I need is my slope. So I'm going to subtract my y's. So let's see, 3 minus 7. So y2 minus y1, and then 9 minus 1. 9 minus 1. And I get negative 4 over 8, which is negative 1/2. All right. Now that I have my slope there, my perpendicular slope, I'm going to change the sign so it's positive 2 over 1, or just 2. And now I'm going to use the point 5, 5 and the slope 2 to write my line. Y minus 5 equals 2, x minus 5, and I'm done. All right, let's try another one. If you think you've got this, you might want to pause and try it out on your own before I move forward with it. All right, so in this one, we've got A at 8, 1 and B at 3, negative 4, and we'll start with the midpoint. So first we add the x's, and divide by 2. And we're going to add the y's and also divide by 2. So let's see, 11 over 2, that's 5.5. And this is going to be negative 3 over 2, which is going to be negative 1.5. Let's see our slope. We'll take y2 minus y1, and then x2 minus x1. There it is. I get negative 5 on top. I also get negative 5 on bottom. So this slope is 1, or 1 over 1. So let's see, when I flip it, I get 1, but I change its sign as well. I get negative 1. And so then I can write the equation of my perpendicular bisector. So y, let's see, my y value is negative, so it's going to be minus negative 1.5, which means I'm actually adding, equals my slope, which is negative 1, times x minus 5.5. And there we go. We've got that one done. I'm going to do one more with you. Again, I would encourage you to try it before you watch the explanation. In this one, I didn't write out that graphic organizer for us, so I'm going to keep track of all the same steps, but I want to show you that you can do it without having that organizer there for you. So I know the first thing I did was the midpoint, and it's a really good habit to go in and label your work. So here's my midpoint, and I'm going to add my x's and divide by 2, and add my y's and divide by 2. And my midpoint is, let's see, 3 minus 1, so that's 2 over 2 is 1. And 7 plus 4 is 11 over 2, which is 5.5. And then I've got my slope. I'm going to subtract my y's. Let's see, I guess 4 minus 7, y2 minus y1. And then negative 1 minus 3. So let's see, on top I get negative 3. On bottom, negative 4, which would just be 3/4. Next, I need my perpendicular slope. And so that's going to be negative 4/3. And then the last step is I take that point and that slope, and I write my equation, y minus 5.5 equals negative 4/3 x minus 1. All right, you've had 3 examples, and hopefully you're able to then do the homework on this.